always said, Meghan especially, but Harry too, try to conduct themselves and their public relations as if it's like 20 years ago, as if like social media was still brand new and the internet was like just barely around, when it was easier to keep privacy or less of a like solid paper trail influenced public opinion. Just as this comment says, in the past, Meghan wasn't fact checked and she was able to lie. Now people have woken up to her and recent fact checking has confirmed many of her lies. Exactly. I think that Meghan and Harry have fallen into this comfortability with lying and like coming up with stories or spins together and failing to check the tape, so to speak, failing to like look back and see the obvious contradictions or lies that they previously said, or like how easy it is to disprove some of these things, because the way things are now is so different than it was when like they were, you know, young adults and social media was new and the internet was still relatively new, because now it's so easy to cross-reference things and check things from their own mouths that they're not getting away with spinning media narratives the way they think they could in the past, or like most people got their information from print sources like newspapers and magazines. Then it didn't have the same impact as it does now with like public opinion and consensus. Because now most people share the public opinion that Meghan and Harry, you know, lied and did these things and made mistakes, and why they're controversial and why are they famous anyway, those types of things. Why does anybody care if they're not part of the royal family anymore? That's now so much more of a widespread public consensus because everybody has access to the from their own mouths information of Harry and Meghan themselves revealing things in interviews and things of that nature. So it's very different from when it kind of depended what magazines you read, and it wasn't so easy to go back and double check things as it is now with the internet. Cinnabunny says, I believe that Harry was always jealous, frustrated, and insecure deep down, but didn't show to the media, probably because the royal family prevented it most of the time for him from doing something that ruined his image. When Meghan came along, brought the worst in him, the insecurities, entitlement, control, and mom issues, because she also has some of those toxic traits. I've seen a lot of comments that have this reaction to the sort of relationship inference deep dive that we did of talking about the public opinions of a lot of people think Harry is kind of the victim in the relationship and Meghan is a very dominating narcissist, kind of controlling things, is one public theory, public opinion theory. And the other is that Harry is super toxic and, you know, like played into it with Meghan. And then of course there's the theory that they're both super toxic. But a lot of people have been commenting on those videos that they think that Harry had a lot of these toxic traits, but they were being kind of filtered out by the palace, and he was given a lot of direction, and he was treated in a way that, you know, a lot of people who might be higher in narcissism or have a lot of entitlement would enjoy. They would enjoy feeling like there's a fuss made of them. They would enjoy being announced and having an important sort of a feeling or job, and they would enjoy having somebody, you know, schedule their events and be at their beck and call, and security and all of these things, because it makes them feel important. So he was very much sort of, his toxic traits were soothed when he was part of the monarchy and a working royal. And he was also then able to sort of, you know, like, I mean, there's this theory of friction, and people who are deeply entitled or who have low distress tolerance can be so amiable or charismatic or come across as great as long as or up until the point at which friction is introduced, where there's more expected of them or something isn't going their way. And that when Meghan entered the scene, she didn't like not getting to do things the way she thought they should be done, but also she then gave Harry permission to, or kind of gave Harry a reason to divert from the guardrails that the palace had in place and the traditions and things like that that were in place, which then resulted in even more friction. And then his target became the institution itself, blind to the fact that everything was fine so long as he stayed within the just sort of general rules that anybody with a job has to follow. And that she was able to not only sort of bring out those more negative traits, but sort of use them to motivate Harry into action, to doing things the way she wanted, or pushing for things to be the way she wanted. And I've also seen a lot of comments that said because they wanted half in, half out and were told no, that's why Megxit happened, was more of a tantrum. And I actually have a video that I'm working on right now. I'm still writing it to make sure that I'm fully ready to film it, but it's about Megxit and the theory that I presented years ago that this is all just a bluff, that they legitimately thought they would be asked back. So I'd love to hear more from you guys in the comments section. John says, Harold wants this. Harold knows he can leave, but actively chooses not to. At some level, Harry despises Meghan, but admires the way she enables his inner rage. Definitely possible. Venus Distorted has a similar viewpoint to what I was just talking about with Megxit. I think Harry thought the Oprah interview and book were going to make the monarchy cave. When they didn't, he didn't know what to do. He thought for sure they'd want him to come back, but he was wrong. They gave him exactly what he said he wanted, and he cannot stand that. I believe that even if Charles and he reunite, once King Charles is gone, William is going to make everything final. No more titles or line of succession or free ride if he goes home to visit. I think ridding Frogmore Cottage of everything they did is the first step of ripping this Band-Aid off slowly, which I prefer. Another really popular sentiment that I agree with is that Harry and Meghan, if they really want to make things right with the royal family on a personal level, they need to be making those efforts and correcting their own mistakes, their lies, setting the record straight, clearing the air, all of those sorts of things, just as publicly and just as loudly that they attacked and lied about the royal family, because Oprah sent shockwaves around the world. So did the Netflix docuseries Fakecumentary when it came out, and so did Spare, all because of this notoriously private and inconceivably famous family having this rogue willing to sell secrets, even if they're not true. It still, makes people curious to hear and see what he has to say. And because they capitalized on that in such a public way that was so worldwide and so sensational, so just like in every single headline for weeks afterwards, then they would need to try to do the same level of repairs in order to even just begin to make things feel more right and balanced. And there's just like no possible way for them to do that. So I don't foresee any way for them to actually build a way back and truly fix things when it comes to the royal family and ultimately then their image and that controversy sort of shadow that they now have over everything that they try to do these days. The Real One says, I thought it was so strange that Harry and Meghan didn't do the entire Oprah interview together. It's almost like Meghan didn't want him to hear what she was saying about his family. And to this day, I bet he has never seen the Oprah interview in its entirety. Totally possible. I also thought that was a bit of a red flag because of lots of reasons. One of which was she basically implicated Harry in a really serious and negative way by saying that when she was having a mental well-being crisis while pregnant that got to, the worst possible points, according to what she said on Oprah, Harry, who was living with her and working with her, either did not notice or he noticed and did nothing, and or when she told him, he once again didn't do anything except she wrote HR, which doesn't even make sense, but that's what she claimed she did. And then they both were just like, well, okay, HR said no, so I guess we'll just sit here and do nothing. So that to me made Harry look like he was a horrible partner and completely dropped the ball and had absolutely no agency or abilities or anything. Like he was just a dud, a couch potato there who was useless. Because how hard is it to see that somebody is seriously struggling And even if they were hiding it, and people will say, I know people will say, sometimes you can't see it. Fine. But then she claims she told him. She claims that she directly told him to his face how she was feeling and how serious it was, what she was feeling. That she said in Oprah, her words were, I told him that I didn't feel that I should be left alone anymore, because she was feeling so low in terms of mental health and wellness, and that she was like afraid to be home alone. And so she tells this to this man, and he still does nothing. So it made him look so incredibly bad, just that one part alone, that I thought it was a red flag that he wasn't there for that, to at least be able to give his side of the story or be asked the pressing question, why didn't you do something, Harry? Hello, you are a man in your mid to late 30s at that point and you did nothing? Are you joking? It made him look so terrible. And the fact that he wasn't there, it does make it seem like all of the things that Meghan said, then maybe she wasn't willing to say it in front of Harry because maybe it was not true or it was exaggerated, or he may have disagreed. And in the Oprah interview, they did contradict each other. Meghan claimed the alleged conversations regarding what baby Archie could potentially look like in the future happened while she was pregnant, alongside with and at the same time as letting her know that her child will not be titled in the same way as William's children, because of the rule that only the direct line, only the actual heir to the thrones of the great-grandchildren of the monarch will be titled automatically as prince and princess, whereas the grandchildren of the monarch are all eligible to be titled prince and princess. And so at the time of Archie's birth, it was a great-grandparent who is on the throne, great-grandmother of Queen Elizabeth II. So she was implying that they weren't going to title him the same way as the Wales family. So that's that competition thread. At the same time as being told he's not going to have the same levels of security, because why would they have the exact same level of security? That maketh no sense. And she said that that all happened at the same time as her being pregnant and the conversations about what he may look like in the future when he's born. And then Harry, later in the interview, Harry came on and joined the conversation, and he claimed that that same conversation about what the future children may look like happened before their wedding. So obviously, the Meghan sort of having her one-on-one with Oprah at the beginning of the interview, then if we were to like just piece this together, it's not, I don't think, reaching too far to infer that part of that was because Meghan was embellishing, changing things, manipulating the truth, taking things out of context, and not being perfectly honest. And therefore, she wanted Harry to not be there to add confusion to that situation. But then also that ended up being not fair to Harry, because then she ended up making him look bad on multiple occasions in multiple ways. So I completely agree that it seems like that was strategic for Meghan to be able to have more rope, I guess you could say. Dainty Dina says, I'm of the opinion that the behaviors we see from Harry were already established in his persona. These behaviors were limited by the palace protocols and familial influence, and Markle essentially gave him the permission to unleash them and actively manipulated them for her personal benefit. I agree. That's just a very common sentiment and reaction or response to these videos about their relationship. Polo Pony says, why does everyone so constantly assume that Harry has unresolved trauma over his mother's death? They never say that about William, do they? Why is this? Is it because William has grown into a normal, rational human being despite being only just 15 when he, too, tragically lost his mother? For some reason, Harry has always given the excuse of unresolved trauma for his appalling behaviors and attitudes, when what he actually experienced was simply the normal grief of bereavement that thousands of people go through at a similarly young age every year. Yes, it's awful, but sadly it is not an exceptional human experience, and people like William, who have mental fortitude and personal integrity, manage to find a way to cope without becoming dysfunctional, and without deploying a permanent free pass of unresolved trauma as though they had been in wartime combat or something equally extreme. If it is unresolved grief, then he should resolve it, get help. He's an adult now, and he needs to start acting like one. I completely agree and have always found this frustrating that Harry almost seems to take ownership of the grief and loss of Diana and seems to take this position that he should be the only one afforded any degree of compassion for that, when William is going through and has gone through the exact same experience, which never leaves you. But I also think about this in a broader sort of way about people in general, and part of adulthood is that you cannot keep looking back at your childhood or your coming of age journey or your journey into adulthood and pointing at all of the challenges or the shortcomings or the things that you felt like your parents did wrong or didn't help with enough and constantly blame everything on that. And if you do have childhood trauma, you still cannot blame all of your mistakes on that. And I feel like a lot of people do that because they conflate the idea of recognizing when something is from a childhood trauma experience or like response, and they conflate the idea of recognizing and sort of labeling and giving a name to the source of these issues or challenges that they have, or these deeper feelings that yes, this mayhaps is from unresolved childhood trauma. At the same time, that still doesn't excuse bad choices as an adult. And at some point you have got to just, I know the term man up is like riddled with problems and bad vibes, but at some point you do kind of have to man up and say, you know, these are the challenges or traumas or experiences that do shape some of my behaviors as an adult. But that is not just because I can label it and say where this is from or this is the root of certain problems, is not a free pass and is not a reason to just say, well, that's it. That's where we stop now. No, you have to push past it and push through it and let go of it, because it's so freeing to really truly take honest accountability for yourself now, today, and who you are now. And Harry and Meghan both seem stuck constantly blaming things on the past. Even recently, I saw an article, a headline that Meghan Markle blames a series of unfortunate events basically for nothing working and the lack of success and for her unpopularity. That first it was the palace being too controlling and the media being horrible, and then it was COVID, which ruined the timing of everything. And then it was these other things that happened that delayed stuff and made things a problem time and time again. Blaming things instead of just taking accountability for where you're at today. Take stock and move forward, because then you're not constantly like bogged down by things that are not now anymore. You know what I mean? I don't know. I think about that sometimes. Karen Longsworth says, I think Harry is toxic too. To me, they both have personality disorders. If Harry was a confident and mentally healthy person, he would not go along with everything she has done. He would say no to her sometimes, and he would not be able to be with her. I think that's fair, because as I explained in my part 2 of that video, I have always found it incredibly fascinating that Harry was willing to let somebody who's not actually spent that much time with his family members go on TV and lay down not only just their opinions on their family members, but lies and manipulations and just even talking about them. It's like gossip on steroids. It's insane what Oprah and Netflix ended up like. Like, even if we think a real intense benefit of the doubt of like, maybe Harry and Meghan didn't mean for it to really go that way or be framed that way or come across that way. They were just trying to share their truth. Oh, even if we were to give huge benefit of the doubt there, still, it does not absolve this issue that Harry allowed this to go on against his own family, who he grew up with and even worked with into his adulthood. You know, if he had left for military training and like never returned to royal life and never returned as a working royal or anything and just kind of stayed separate, that would be one thing. But he didn't. And he worked alongside Catherine and William and King Charles, Prince Charles at the time, on all kinds of projects. Even Invictus Games was launched initially from the Prince's Trust, and at the time it was Duke and Duchess of Cambridge's royal fund of Catherine and William to create Invictus even, and the Heads Together, and many other initiatives. He was with them all the time and working with them as an adult. And so for him to just the plain disrespect of letting somebody else, it's either Harry is so cowardly that he feels this way. He thinks these things about his family and he didn't have the balls to just say it himself on Oprah. So he had Meghan say it, or he didn't have the balls to say, no, I will not let you speak about my family that way, no matter how mad I am. And I think a lot of people see that and have that value of like, I don't really care what personal drama or fighting is going on. I still wouldn't want someone deliberately trying to ruin my brother or sister or parents' life or reputation or image in the public eye. I still wouldn't want someone saying something horrible about them that's going to follow them around the rest of their lives and potentially do damage to like their livelihood or anything like that, just because I'm mad at them or feel like they did things wrong behind closed doors, under stress or not, you know? I think that alone is incredibly illuminating when it comes to Harry and Meghan. Janet Lee says, of course she uses the children to control Harry, like divorced parents often do. She has Harry terrified that if the kids met their relatives, they would like them or love them or want to go back. Meghan Markle won't do anything to lose control. I definitely think that that is a valid viewpoint, because even just the unique, special, exceptional, and hugely significant position that King Charles and Prince William and all of those family members are in. And, you know, to somebody accustomed to living in a mansion in a beautiful place like Montecito, California, with a very privileged life, even they would recognize the huge, just hugely different, transformative, amazing experience and presence of the royal family. They have a hugely prominent role in history and a legacy that's like undeniably one of the most prominent, famous, I mean, they are the most famous monarchy in the world. But the legacy itself is huge. And the specialness of that, there's no way the kids wouldn't see that and think, geez, this is amazing. I would love to be closer to this. There's no way as they get older that will decrease. Rather, it would probably increase. The draw and the allure, just the specialness of the royal family, the castles, the beautiful grounds, the beautiful homes, the beautiful jewels, the rich history, all of it is only going to become more and more appealing with time. And if I put myself in like a child's shoes who grows up and then learns many, many years later just how special their childhood could have been, and the fact that Harry and Meghan try to manipulate this as, well, we wouldn't have had any privacy if we had stayed with the royal family. Nonsense, okay? Absolute nonsense. There are members of the royal family whose children are not public figures, who aren't titled. There are members of the royal family who are not working royals and therefore are not followed around by paparazzi, and their children are not getting photographed all the time. Harry and Meghan have always been under this delusion that they would have the same level of interest as Princess Diana just because Harry is Diana's son. Princess Diana had that level of interest because of a weird timing in the world where press was becoming a bigger and bigger deal and media was rapidly expanding at the time. And Princess Diana, when she married and married Prince Charles, it was a time where there was this mystery about the royals still, because press was not the same as it is now. And that went from this sort of bit of mystery where there was a lot more control to access, to the internet being born and people being able to share information so much faster, and paparazzi became so much more of a big deal, and the press pace began to accelerate very, very quickly. And at the same time as all of that happened, the drama within the then Prince Charles and Princess Diana relationship and the separation. And they were, no matter what, regardless of all the drama and the media temperature, they were to be the future king and queen. And so having the future king going through a divorce and all of that was a big, big deal. But Meghan and Harry were never, ever going to be treated with the same level of interest. They were never, ever going to be seen with the same level of importance. So I really struggle to fathom how they ever thought that they were on the same level or same par. And I think it colored a lot of their behaviors and a lot of their positions and things that they got offended by and whatnot. And along with many of you, I do think that that's what the true beef with the media was about. That Harry and Meghan thought they deserved and expected all that attention and same level of prominence and whatnot, and to be followed and chased down and whatnot the way Diana and Catherine were. And when it didn't happen, they were personally offended. And that's what they thought was biased, was why you're not interested because of bias. That's what this is. Rather than you're not as interested because they're not going to be king and queen one day the way William will be with Catherine. That's what changed the level of interest. It was not personal. It was about the line of succession. But what do you guys think? Thank you for joining me for this chatty video, and thank you for all of your interesting comments. I hope you have a happy day ahead, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.